Well, Richard and Denise are missionaries to the Ukraine, and have moved over on their own and have just started that ministry. Now, we'd really love to hear how you got started, when you got over there, what happened, and how did you get integrated, and then finally, what is the prognosis? How does the forecast look?
Nutshell version is, having spent a lot of time previously in country, coming and going, we had some pretty good ideas of things we thought would be good, that would work. And so we started working on those, and we learned some lessons about the current status of things. So I think it's fair to say that we got off to a good start. And so the three things we want to emphasize are planting and growing churches, work with the orphans, and then what we call multiplying ministries, where we help other ministries that are there improve what they're doing as a way to spread the kingdom overall. One of the things that happened pretty early on is the multiplying ministry part took off right away when people heard, four existing ministries contacted us and said, would you come talk to us about how we can expand our vision or get a new vision for now to be effective in this day and time? Because something that's true about all of them is they're all at capacity. They're all doing great work, but they are limited on how much they can do because of personnel, because of fundraising capabilities, or in some cases lack thereof. And another thing that applies to all of them is 15 years ago, Ukraine was a different situation than it is now, and so they designed their ministries based on those circumstances. And now people need the gospel, they need their services as much as ever, but the way that you effectively engage is changed. And so they're like, can you do for us we've had a consulting business for, a lot of years with nonprofits and mission groups and churches and things. Can you do for us this envisioning and creating a better path forward? So we found ourselves pretty quickly involved in that. And so we're glad to help work with them to help the kingdom overall grow. So that was one of the things that happened.
The two things that I think we're the most excited about is church planting, and we knew that we would be involved in church planting in the neighborhood where we live, and that indeed is a wonderful neighborhood. It's a large neighborhood, and we're excited about that. But the other church plant is downtown Kyiv. There's many universities downtown, and there's a lot of university students that are very interested in conversational English. And so we started an English club, and we had several sessions of that. But the idea is that through that there will end up being an English-speaking church there in downtown Kyiv. The church plant in our neighborhood, we live in a neighborhood with literally thousands of people in just our apartment complex. If you got our newsletter, there's a video that gives the scope of that neighborhood. It's full of young families, and so we have already begun meeting our neighbors and getting to know them, and also our taxi cab drivers. They speak a little bit of conversational English, and when we let them know that we're going to have an English club, they're very interested. They not only want to come and participate, but they're going to bring their family with them. So we are looking forward to getting that going and that being a part of the church plant there. A space has been purchased, and so there's a place. It needs to be finished out, and that will be what we call the Community Activity and Ministry Center there. It'll be a place where the church meets, but it's also where the church is going to serve that community where we live. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's got great possibilities. Over there in Europe and in Ukraine, these are big apartment buildings. The whole bottom floor is retail, wherever they are. And so the ministry partner for that part of it that called us has purchased the whole bottom floor of one of these buildings. But like Denise was saying, the way they do it there, they build it, But right now, it's still concrete and cinder block walls, and the wires are sticking out of the wall. And so whoever buys it then finishes out themselves. Same way with our apartment. And so the funds were raised to purchase it, but now we need some funds to finish it out. I want to return for just a second because this has to do.
Finished talking about that space.
Okay, we'll talk about the space, and then I want to come
So
back
the
to
idea
the
with that
English.
space is it'll serve the community. So it will have a commercial kitchen in it, plenty of space for the church to meet, classrooms. It'll be designed so, let's say for an LST that would come over, they have everything that they need to do what they do there. And also a cafe. What we've learned is that coffee shops are really popular. And if you can, have one that has a unique thing about it, then, so our unique thing is that there will always be English-speaking people there, so you can come and have your, coffee and tea and speak English with the people that are there. So we feel like this is a place where it will connect us with that community. And this center will also be a place that we can serve that community, whether it's having a family event or holiday event or just, whatever's needed. So.
Kids.
I'm done.
There's droves of young mothers with baby strollers and young families. So we're going to obviously be reaching out, doing something for the kids. I want to return to the conversational English. There's no end of English courses you can take where you study grammar and vocabulary, but the opportunity to talk to a native speaker is really hard to come by. And this is what they're interested in for a variety of reasons. But for our purposes, it's to help them with that, but to make contacts and build relationships. And we have an LST team coming over, as I mentioned, in the summer, and we'll be creating other opportunities. English Club in our neighborhood, that's one of the things we're going to use to make these contacts and attract people. But it's building relationships, and the material that we use in LST and in our other English-speaking activities include scripture. And so they'll read scripture in English, they'll read it in Russian, and that opens the door. So it's a great way to make contacts. We plan to use it in our neighborhood as well as downtown and other places. And most of the students that came at the downtown location are college students. Sorry, Chris had to leave. I'll catch him later and say, if you're going to bring some teams over, college students, we're going to be loaded with college students.
Yeah.
Great.
And so that's a real connector. But when we do we try to have fun. When we do these English conversational sessions, one of the things we've done is we do karaoke Beatles songs because they know them, but there's the English words. It's about building relationships. We do exercises. One of them is idioms. Talk about idioms. Yeah. Well, Denise found an exercise of Texas idioms, so she led that exercise.
That was interesting. It was a cultural lesson too, so it was a lot of fun. So.
Blew the circuits when one of the idioms was "sure enough." She's kicking me in the shin like, "Don't tell this." But they said, "Sure enough." We went to the beer barn and they were out of Shiner, and they were. Anyway, it was.
It was an interesting discussion, but it ended up in a really good place.
Yeah, in a really good place.
Yeah.
I want to go back to church planting for just a minute because Denise told you about our neighborhood and the focus there and the one downtown. But we're also working with the weekly nationwide television program. And that has spawned a lot of congregations and Bible study groups across the country. And the situation is, because they're at capacity, just putting on the program and having the response center to send out all the materials and things, nobody's really doing the kind of follow-up that everybody would like to do because there's just not enough people and not enough funds. But you've got all these new fellowships all over the place trying to start the church, and we plan to go to these people, to mentor them, to study with them, have regional opportunities to come together, and maybe a yearly annual meeting where we bring the leaders of these small churches in to do the follow-up. We've been really good about the first part of the commission, not so good about the second part, to teach them, because that takes make disciples, yeah, because that takes funds, because they can't afford to come in because of the economy in Ukraine, so we would need to bring them in, but that's part of what's going on. Orphans.
Our first week in Ukraine, we literally went to camp for a week with orphans. It was at the Black Sea. There were about 40 kids there, and these were troubled teens, and then some of the orphans from what they call a special school, and it was for those who are vision impaired and slow learning. It was a wonderful camp, and we got to know the kids. This is an orphanage that Vanya, who's the ministry leader, this is a continuous ministry for him. He visits these. He has 3 orphanages he visits every week. And so we just were able to start relationships with those kids and, of course, the administrators of the orphanage. And so that whole week was wonderful. It was a good way to start ministry there. And then, of course, we visited weekly as we went through the rest of our time there. So I think that Vanya visits 3 orphanages regularly. This is a ministry that there are many orphanages there, and there's much opportunity. Vanya does an excellent job. We look forward to partnering with him, but I think there is much room for another young Ukrainian couple to come alongside him and then just expand that ministry. And so I think our part in that is helping them understand how to expand and go forward and multiply what they're doing there. And we're looking forward to that and seeing who God brings into the picture to help with that orphan ministry. So
out of the funds that we raise, we've helped them buy fruit and food and gifts and things that they use in their program. And one of the orphanages I tried to teach the older boys how to play American football and found out I'm really out of shape. Worse than I thought, but that's not the point. The point is, they're interested in it, they learn that, and then there's always, Vanya always presents a Bible lesson. In this particular orphanage, we were outside and they climbed up on the tractor and the trailer behind it, and he tells them some of the parables of Jesus and talks to them about their life, and there's somebody interested in them. These kids, they don't have anybody.
So Vanya's there for the long term, and he understands when these kids grow up, they become 17, then they leave the orphanage. And so his objective is really to educate them before they leave in a way of, this is what's going to happen when you leave, so you need to be prepared for this. Yeah. These kids don't have support network. They live at the orphanage. Some of them have distant family or a family member that's an alcoholic or, something like this. And so his heart's desire is that as the church grows, these children are connected to the church and the church members, and they really become the extended family for these kids and help them through their life. Some of
the ones that you're ministering to.
They're in the 3 orphanages that he works in, which oh goodness, I've worked with orphans in Ukraine for a long time, so that's a big question for me. There's a lot of orphans in Ukraine, a lot of orphanages in Ukraine. In fact, Terry Kyle works with a group, right. And so I think that his group that they work with are another part of town with other orphanages. There's plenty of work just in the Kyiv area. So it's hard for me to answer how many orphans in the orphanages that Vanya works in. I would say, I really don't know, I would have to guess. But at this one, I know there's probably 75 kids that are there, and then it's probably true at the other ones as well. It's usually what we find is between 75 and maybe 150 is what is at a typical orphanage. So
let me add a little perspective to that. Part of the ministry that's going on, he goes personally to those 3, but the orphan outreach there for at least the last 10 years has been sending out a spiritual newsletter to 100, almost 100 orphanages
Right.
who know who we are. So if we had the resources and the people, we could expand exponentially. And that's pretty representative of a lot that's going on there. The opportunities are genuine. There's changes taking place politically and culturally in the country that have opened up things even more. And so we are asking for discernment about how we're best and how to invest our time and resources and how to go about it, because we've been offered so many genuine opportunities. That's one. We're in 3, could be over 100. The number of people responding to the national television program could be, for example, it's on 2 days a week, on Saturday and Sunday. The management of the network came to him a couple of 3 months ago and said, we'd like to have your program on every day, which sounds like, oh yeah,
Just
think
do
about
that.
But the response center that handles all the requests that come in for materials and phone calls and all that is already really stretched. And so if you go to quadruple, then that calls for a whole organizational, you got to address the whole thing. And so that's pretty representative of the way the situation is there. So there's a lot of response. I'll just say a quick word about the cultural changes. The war has made Ukrainians feel much more Ukrainian. Before it was a mix, Russia was part of it. They all kind of had this common heritage, but that has really said, no, we have decided we're Ukrainian. And another thing that's happened is it has caused them to have a much more independent mindset. We don't depend on the government like we used to. If anything's going to happen, we've got to take personal responsibility. And they're really sick and tired of the corruption that's been endemic there. That's what this revolution in 2014 and the one before that was about. That was a moral revolution.
Is there a Ukrainian language versus Russian?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is. We've got to learn some of both, which we'll be addressing. But everybody understands Russian, but there is a Ukrainian language. I would say there's some similarity. There's probably 60% overlap. And it's moving toward Ukrainian. If you're in the eastern side, it's Russian. If you're in the western side, it's Ukrainian. Kyiv, the capital where we are, is right in the middle, and it's a mix, but it's moving toward Ukrainian. So this mindset, more independent mindset, means that they do not automatically nearly as much equate being in the church or Christian with government. Orthodox church and government, they don't. That's changing a lot. So that's an important shift that I think.
Okay. You guys have any questions?
Well, I'm curious about, with Russia on the eastern, is that moving westward, or is that any threat to where you're at or anything?
The war zone.
The area that's affected is 10%, if you looked at it that way, and it's in the east. And as it sits right now, that's pretty much it. I don't think anybody sees it moving any further west at this point in time. Who knows for sure, but we don't feel a threat. We don't feel insecure or unsafe there.
There's a man that we met, the invitations to go teach in the university, the teacher training pedagogical university, which has a graduate division in management and psychology. I mean, it's strange how anyway. So I had invitations to teach there. I met this guy. He is an assistant to one of the members of the national parliament. And he goes and every Monday does a prayer breakfast in the university. So I've been to 2 of those and met him. We got to talking, and I've been invited to co-teach a Saturday Bible class for university students with him. When I first met him, I thought, okay, he says he's Christian. We're in Ukraine. He's in this upper level. He's probably Orthodox, and I'd have to contend with I haven't heard him say one thing that I disagree with, including his dissertation on what Romans chapter 8 means.
Great, excellent.
So that's an open door. So as far as the future,
Yeah, the future, what does it look like?
When do y'all go back?
We'll go back on February 22nd. So we're looking forward to it. We're excited. The doors that have opened are incredible. And I think our job right now is to choose wisely and to spend our time in the places we feel like God has allocated for us. So,
That's important.
some of our immediate things are the planting the church in our neighborhood, the use of conversational English to make contacts for that, for downtown in general, be paying close attention to that. Always the work with the orphans, pure religion, and then just see what other open doors.
All right, any other questions?
I don't know, I was thinking about going over there and conversational Spanish, but I don't think my, or English, I don't think I'll fit.
Well, you could go over there and teach conversational Texan.
There, yeah, I can do that.
That's actually what we're teaching.
Well, we are just elated that you guys have chosen to do this, in your latter years. That is so wonderful and exemplary to all of us. That's not to say you're,
Wait,
you know. What
I wouldn't be here then.
Yeah, we're good.
No,
So-
we agree.
it's unusual to have missionaries.
Well, we were
watch.
I'm just saying. We were surprised that we got this call at this time in our life.
Yeah.
We are elated that we got it. And we do have to say that, at our age, we did consider it a little bit longer than we would have 20 years ago. But we feel like God called and He'll provide, and we think that includes our health and our minds and everything. So we're happy to be doing it.
On behalf
We
of
just are.
Southside, we just are so proud and thankful that you're doing this.
Well, we appreciate the partnership in the gospel and the support. It's a big
Yeah.
part of us being able to be over there. I'm going to mention one other thing real quickly. Vanya, that Denise has been talking about, is the son of Sasha that preaches on national television. And Vanya is the one that films and edits the program. He's really, really good. And so he was at our apartment working on something for us. I let him use my MacBook Pro. And he said, I've done in 10 minutes what it takes me hours to do as far as editing the program because my computer is 12 years old. I said,
Yeah.
we're going to see if we can find you $1,600 for a new laptop and software so you can save a day a week of time basically and do that. So.
Vanya was my first interpreter in 2007 when the Southside team went to camp the first time, and he was all of 17 years old then. But he was already videoing. In fact, his videoing, he just started videoing his dad, and he sent it to the TV station, and they were like, "Oh, this is good. We want more of this." So, and then when we worked for Eastern European Mission, he came over a couple of times. He did videoing for us in Ukraine and for EEM, but then he came over here and he worked alongside the videographer that we had with EEM. So he's like in our history. So when we were there, we're like, Vanya, we need a video. He goes, okay. So, but he does that for the television program. He does it for us. He does it for other organizations over there. So he's also the ministry leader of the orphan ministry, and he is really a vital part of the church there where we are. Okay. And I would call him the worship leader.
Okay.
Oh,
I don't know what you want to call it, but he's, he plays that role, and he is a very friendly person, and people are really just happy to be with him. And I think that he addresses the young people very well. They respect him, and so he's a really important part of the church there as a whole. So,
Does he speak English?
yes. Yeah, he was my very first interpreter.
Okay.
And so he does.
And where did he learn to speak English?
I really don't know. I think he taught himself. I mean, I do. So, but he's pretty good at it. And
Mm-hmm.
he's a great interpreter, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So
Okay,
he's
any,
about 30.
any last comments? Connie, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying he's about 30 years old.
He is. He's married and has 2 kids. So. yeah.
One thing, how you're funding, you mentioned doing fundraising right while you're here. Is
Yes.
that, are you okay on funding, or are you short, or?
We need a little bit of personal funds. We mostly need working funds right now. That allows us to have an interpreter, it allows us to travel and do all of the things that we do for ministry over there. So, and then we knew right away when God called us that a part of what we would be doing is raising funds for specific projects for whatever ministries need those. So we have several areas of fundraising that we're doing. Yeah.
We're trying to make up $400 a month. That's the reduction from the trust, and then the working fund. We need.
Okay. Any final comments to the church or to anybody? Just
We're glad to be partners. We hope that y'all are excited and about what God's
We are.
doing there, and because it's all of us. I mean, we're there personally, but we're not there by ourselves.
okay, well, blessings to you.
Thank you.
Safe travel.